is just forward, this is backward. If you press and hold on this,
Can I have your attention, please?
it'll do a spotlight.
Oh, I don't want that.
Yeah, but just
Thank you.
forward, backward.
At this time, I'd like to call
We'll
the
transition over to you in a minute.
Board of Trustees meeting to order. And to start off the meeting, as we have done so historically, we'd like to start with some sort of student and faculty. I'm sorry. Just a moment, Dr. Cunningham.
Oh, well,
No, you're good. But we'll have a roll call just for attendance.
Allard,
Here.
Fleming, Geist, here. Harper, here. Rose, here. Sigardi, Stites,
Here.
Van Hooser,
Here.
Wilmore, Jones.
Here.
You have a quorum.
We have a quorum, so I'll call the meeting to order. And as I was about to say, in starting all of our board meetings, we like to do something to at least honor and respect a student or faculty or something great that this university is doing. I think it's important to always do this because it keeps our focus on what our mission really should be. So with that, I have two guests from Tennessee Tech's Industrial Assessment Center to join us today for two great reasons. The IAC was recently honored as a 2018 Center of Excellence among a field of centers from universities including Georgia Tech, Clemson, Kentucky, Alabama, Florida, and Miami. As our IAC graduates are in big demand with employers in the growing field of energy management and efficiency, receiving multiple job offers because of their experience and education. Tech Center is the only funded IAC in the state and one of 28 centers nationally. Undergraduates and graduate students gain experience in industrial energy efficiency and energy management by helping assess small and medium-sized manufacturers. Today I'd like to introduce Billy Alston, a graduate student in mechanical engineering from Bristol, Tennessee. And secondly, my friend, Dr. Glenn Cunningham, Director of Tech's Industrial Assessment Center. Billy is one of more than 160 graduate and graduate students trained at Tech's IAC. So please, Dr. Cunningham and Billy, can you tell us a little bit about it?
all right. Well, thank you very much, Tom. Can everybody hear? Am I loud enough? That's usually not a problem, but well, I mean, I think Tom gave half our presentation. We only got 10 minutes, so we better get rocking here. We'll go through some of the details of the program. The first two bullet points, we provide energy efficiency assessments, small, medium-sized companies, and there is a criteria I'll flash up there in a minute. That's one of the primary goals of this, is to help industry become more effective and efficient, keep them in business, and the other is to provide hands-on training to students like Billy here.
One of the services that we offer is a free cybersecurity review to small and medium-sized manufacturers. This is part of our contract through DOE, and if they want that, we put them in contact. We have a center here at Tech as well, and then if they are interested in smart manufacturing, 3D printing, we have contacts at ORNL that we put them in contact with, and we try to work things out with them.
Okay, so our assessment process, the companies really approach us in general. We do some advertising. We will do press releases and things like that. Word spreads, word of mouth is pretty good advertising. So we establish contact with the company. Michelle Davis is our coordinator here on campus. She's our mother hen that keeps us all going in the right direction. Everybody's got to have somebody like that around, and she does a great job for us. She gets utility information. We have a pre-assessment form that just tells us what equipment they have, what we're going to be looking at, and then we eventually schedule. We visit on site, typically one day. Larger companies sometimes get 2 days, and then we follow up within 60 days with a very detailed report, engineering calculations and all.
A little bit about the program history. It was founded in 1976. There's only 4 universities. Now there's 35 universities. We typically have an implementation cost of $130,000, and they generally implement about $50,000 within the first year of business.
Yeah, there is. I didn't mention there is an implementation survey. We follow up at 9 months to see what they've really done And of course, the heroes have done it all, and the ones we got, I knew those guys weren't going to do anything. You know, I mean, some people will, some people won't. The assessment team is typically 1 to 2 faculty members and 3 to 6, sometimes 7 students. We always invite the local utility rep and TVA to come, and because they bring important perspectives, power factor, and what the account looks like on the other side of the fence. And then we occasionally, depending on what's going on at the plant, will invite external experts as well.
Here's a map of all the ISE centers. You see us, and then Memphis is close by. Clemson, which we helped them start up their center last year.
Yep. You can see there's a lot of large universities up there, and we're right there in the same kettle with the rest of them. The dots represent individual companies that have received assessments over the life of the program.
In the 12 years that we've had a center, we have had over 160 students trained. I want to say it's 215 plants assessed now, 49 million in persistent energy costs. And persistent energy costs is from the first assessment, then they're still totaling the amount of savings from that very first assessment that we've done through, like, say, 20 years. 5.83 tera BTUs in energy savings identified and 0.35 million metric tons of CO2 savings.
We have a satellite center, University of Memphis. Our contract says we're going to do 18 assessment days per year, and Memphis does usually 5 or 6 for us. We occasionally team with Memphis. We really like those. We get a bigger plant. We all show up together, and we learn from each other, and the schools work together on it.
This was actually an assessment I think we did about 2 years ago now. This was on top of Kellogg's roof. Picture of the assessment.
Okay, and here's where we were presented the Center of the Year. That photographer ought to be shot for taking that. That's all I can say. But at any rate, the other guy that's not me is John Schmiegel. He heads up the program for U.S. Department of Energy. He's located in Washington, D.C. And so every year they select one center, and after you've received it, you can't receive it again for 5 years. And there's lots of outstanding centers. We had a really good year the last year or two, and so we were recognized for that.
Some of the typical areas that we look to identify potential savings is motors, furnaces, pumps, compressed air. Just as a few as an example, you can see the rest on there. But if you look at the picture, this is something that we walked around the building, and they were dumping hot steam on their cooling tower, which is not a good idea.
Johnny, you don't install them like that, do you? Never seen that before. We got a few other action shots here for you. The throttle valve was actually at Schneider Electric in Smyrna, and they sell energy management services. And we walked in and said, "Oh, we're not going to find anything here." Ed Wilhite's the guy that we walked out of the meeting, walked right into that. So that's on a parts washer. They got 7 valves look just like that, and they're all throttled. You know, the valve's mostly closed. It's more closed than open. That's energy waste. And they make variable frequency drives, which is the solution to this. And I said, Ed, look. He says, "Yeah, that's the parts washer." Ed, look at the valve. "Yeah, that's a butterfly valve." Ed, it's throttled. "Oh, yeah, I didn't think about that. I only walk by this 5 times a day, you know." And so they installed those drives before we could write up the measure. And they sent us documented savings that we put in our report for them. That's pretty amazing. And then the other is just, you know, the tank got a leak, stripped off the insulation. It's a 200-degree something tank. And, well, where'd the insulation go? Well, nobody really knew. You know, stuff doesn't get put back on.
Another potential area is we look at fans and fan types. So like on the left, that's inlet guide vanes, and on the right, it's discharge dampers, and discharge dampers are the least efficient method of controlling the airflow.
So this is my favorite slide. This is a safety valve on a steam turbine. That's about a 2 or 3 megawatt steam turbine that was providing almost all the electricity for this plant. This plant didn't want to invest in maintenance. And so they told their maintenance guys, you got to keep this turbine running. That's the overspeed valve, the trip valve. And so guess what? The maintenance guys find a way to make it run. So they put that crescent wrench on there, they tied the safety open, and it ran. And the next time they had an overspeed event, you know what happened? The daggum thing blew up. Didn't kill anybody, but that's a classic picture right there. And this,
Yeah, so what a lot of people like to do is they like to fix compressed air leaks by tying a rag over it. They leave it like that because they forget after they fix it, so they never fix it. So this is one of the things that we try to prevent.
so that's not what you're supposed to do with a compressed air leak. Anyway, questions? So, we're starting our 13th year. We've had this grant for 12 years, and they give it in 5-year grant cycles. So we're starting our 3rd year of the 3rd grant cycle, so we're going into year 13. Well, we get $325,000 a year from DOE. DOE foots the bill. The assessments are free to the companies. We try to beat them out of lunch sometimes, but that's up to them. But other than that, it's free to the company, and DOE pays for it.
Well, my experience tends to get higher. Is that they always know more, and people like higher than other universities. It makes their salespeople come in my office and perform the work there. And I can get it up. And I really appreciate this kind of program because you deliver into the workplace young men who are already experienced, already have this level of exposure to the real world, and also I think you help them in the studies to really see why it's important to be examined on themselves today.
That's why DOE does this. The average IAC student, if they go into the energy field, makes an extra $10,000 a year starting. They are in great demand.
Any marketing man, person, president,
We will.
Well, I mean, that could lead to longer discussions we could talk about. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it could be. I mean, we identify lots of opportunities that could be spawned into, PhD level projects and things like that. And most of the time right now, that's not happening.
so did you do something similar to this with students down in somewhere in Britain?
Well, we do several jobs that we're doing more medical research kind of stuff. But like his experience in work, yes, that's
The same thing.
yeah.
I think the more they have to get this university, the better off we're gonna be. And I commend all of you who do that.
Well, that's the core of our strategic plan. You just summarized it pretty well, actually. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Glenn, thank you so much. Thank you again. Okay, let's go ahead and continue with the meeting. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes, item number 3. And we actually have 2 sets of minutes to approve. There was one in the morning on June 26th. We had a special board meeting, and then we had the regular board meeting in the afternoon. Both sets of minutes are in your board book. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes? Barry made the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion made, seconded by Van Hooser. Any other corrections or additions? All in favor of approving both sets of minutes signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Also like to remind people in the meeting to make sure you turn on your mics and speak to the mics as we go forward. So, next item on the agenda, item number 4, is the President's report. Dr. Oldham?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you again. I really appreciate the work that the trustees do on a regular basis, not just during the meetings. Everybody sees you here during the meetings, of course, but I know how active most of you are throughout the year, and I appreciate that greatly. I am standing before you today in a fairly unique situation that I don't know that I was fully prepared for. I'm not only standing before you as president of Tennessee Tech, but also as a parent of a Tennessee Tech student currently, and sometimes I get a little schizophrenic between the two, quite honestly. But it's actually quite an honor in both cases. But it's interesting now to be able to see the campus through the eyes of a family of someone attending school here. So I appreciate that opportunity and look forward to seeing what I learn from that in the coming months and years. I also want to report on something that took place in August, about a month ago for us. Thanks to Trustee Harper, we were welcomed on the Possum Riviera for a wonderful cabinet retreat. The cabinet spent a day there at her lovely place on the lake and had an outstanding and very productive day of conversations around how we're going to move Tennessee Tech to another level, and really focused on how to, really connecting to my previous comment, how to look at the institution through the eyes of the student to a large extent, and to filter everything in that regard. So I appreciate that. I appreciate that opportunity, and I can't say enough good things about the leadership that we have in place in the cabinet. Thank you for your support earlier today in naming our new interim vice president for research, and I think that's going to be really outstanding. Give you a little bit of an update on some things from the June meeting. We spent a lot of time at the June meeting discussing the strategic plan, and so that's been laid out before you. You've approved all of that. I want to let you know that that's in full implementation mode currently. We have named roughly 50 faculty and staff members that are now directly engaged in the Tech Tomorrow strategic plan implementation through committees and working groups. The working groups are led by, in each case, 4 working groups. They're each led by an outstanding faculty member from the campus, known for their innovation and energy, and these are people that get things done, and I appreciate that greatly. Most of these groups have about 10 members. The vast majority, at least 6 faculty, are on each committee, each working group. They're meeting. We have a retreat scheduled with the entire group of 50 for next week, and at that time we'll discuss priorities and really kick this thing off in a major way. So the best way I know to describe it is we are moving out of strategic planning at this point, and we're actively engaged in strategic doing. And that's what ultimately is going to be the proof of this. I want to thank all the leaders that have spent so much time on the implementation phase. Michael Akins is the Tech Tomorrow director. Jeff Bowles, head of the chemistry department, is serving as the Tech Tomorrow faculty lead. And then the 4 working groups are being chaired by Ed Lissick from the chemistry department, Ann Davis from the College of Business, Jason Beach from the College of Education, and Bedelia Russell from the School of Nursing. Outstanding group of individuals, and I have a great deal of optimism for how this is going to go. Also want to tie this together. Not only the strategic plan, it's important to know that the strategic plan is not a one-off for us here at Tennessee Tech, that it becomes the filter for everything that we do. That's our goal, that's our ambition for this. And so you heard just a few minutes ago in committee about the 5-year strategic financial plan from Dr. Stinson. Although that's not directly a part of the strategic plan, Tech Tomorrow plan, but it's integrated therein. And so I also want to commend her and the group of faculty and staff that are working with Dr. Stinson to make that financial plan a reality, because we need to gain more predictability financially into this process to make this strategic plan work ultimately to its conclusion. I also want to update you very quickly. We talked a fair amount at the last meeting about proposed new engineering building. That proposal for a new engineering building has now been provided to the state. It's under review at the Tennessee Higher Education Commission. We would expect sometime later this fall to hear back in terms of how well it has been scored. At this point, we're still waiting on that review, but we feel very good about it. We feel very optimistic. It may or may not receive funding in this legislative cycle, but I think it's a very strong proposal, and it should fare well, if not this year, in a coming year soon. So I'm very optimistic that will be funded in the near future. I want to add something to my reports. I'm not sure I'll do this every time I meet with you, but it's been suggested. I think it's a wonderful suggestion that I include in my reports occasionally some challenges that we face, maybe some areas that we're struggling a little bit with, or we're not doing quite as well as we should. And so I've outlined about three what I consider ongoing major challenges that I'll talk about here briefly. Some of them have already been hit on today earlier in committees, but I'll talk about them briefly here and tell you a little bit about what we're doing in those areas. Certainly enrollment and student success are always going to be at the top of the list. We're here for students. That's what we're in the business of, helping students be successful. And so you heard from Dr. Johnson earlier today a lot of what he's involved in helping us provide the leadership that we need in terms of enrollment and student success. I'll highlight a couple of those things right now. That this fall 2018 fall class, we have nearly 1,900 freshmen, first-time students. That's more than a 7% increase year to year over last year. It's the largest freshman class we've had in about 5 years, and it's the third consecutive year of growth in freshman class. So I think that bodes well. Now, we also follow up because, and you've heard this before, we had extremely large graduating classes the last 2 years, record classes of graduates both the last 2 years. This past year, 2,564 students graduated from Tennessee Tech. Just to give you sort of an idea of how much of an increase that is, that's a 28% increase in bachelor's graduates since 2012. So it's pretty substantial increase over that time period. So the preliminary enrollment for this fall, numbers are still being finalized, but preliminary enrollment is 10,186. As has already been indicated to you, that's a little bit of a drop overall from last year, and it's been expressed as some of the reasons why that is, but primarily due to the large graduating class and the drop in both international students and transfer students that we've observed. We did, however, which is a bright point, we saw an increase of 3.6% of total graduate students on campus, bringing grad student enrollment to almost 1,200 students. So that's a positive sign as well, and I think that will continue also. But enrollment continues to be a challenge, and one that we are trying to aggressively meet with the steps that Dr. Johnson indicated earlier today and others that we're discussing. In terms of student success, we've done really well in some areas. Others we've slid a little bit this year. First-year retention rate is a metric that we often look at in terms of student success. For an institution like Tennessee Tech, at least my benchmark has always been somewhere around 80% is a pretty good benchmark for first-year retention rate. When I arrived in 2012, we had a 69% first-year retention rate. We worked real hard over those first few years to bring that up. The last 2 years, we were knocking on the door of 80%. We were just below at about 79% both of the last 2 years. Well, for this fall, we've dropped to 75%. I'm not exactly sure why we've dropped to 75%. We may have just lost a little bit of focus in our efforts on first-year retention, but that's an area that we're going to pay a lot more attention to, because as I'll describe now, if you can't keep students into the second year, it's hard to graduate them in 4 or 5 or 6 years. So it's very important to retain students into their sophomore year, and we'll sort of double down on what we need to do there to bring that focus back into shape. But because of largely I think, because of the increase in freshman retention over the past several years, we are now seeing a significant jump in graduation rate at Tennessee Tech. Our 6-year graduation rate, which is the national norm or standard to look at, that's what you compare universities across the country, for the first time topped 55%. And that may sound a little low if you're not used to looking at these things. Keep in mind those are students that start here as freshmen and complete a bachelor's degree within that 6 years. And nationally they do that because it's 1.5 times what you would consider to be the minimum or typical time to complete a bachelor's degree. So 55%, we've generally historically been hovering right around or below 50%. So a 5 percentage point jump in graduation rate is actually pretty substantial. I think we can get it at or above 60%, and that would be our ultimate goal. But this is a great indicator of success for us. It would put us, in terms of public universities in the state, it would put us second in the state, public universities in terms of graduation rate. It's also interesting to know, because with the strategic plan, we're beginning to look at not focusing on the 6-year rate, but looking at the 4-year rate as our standard. And that's not what other universities typically do. But I think it's important for us, if we're indicating that Tennessee Tech is a place for students and to help students be successful, we need to find ways to get them successfully graduated in 4 years, and that should be our goal. So for the first time, our 4-year graduation rate topped 34%. So over a third of our students are graduating in 4 years or less. Over 50% are graduating in 5 years, and now, as I said, 55% are graduating in 6. So I think it's if you look at those historically, that's a very positive trend that we'll continue to try to move on. A second challenge that we face, and you've seen evidence of that earlier today with new academic programs, but our competition is steadily improving, and they're very aggressive about it. So not only to get ahead of our competition, but just to keep up, we have to aggressively develop competitive academic programs, or other institutions will come and get our students that we want to keep. So you saw 2 new programs approved today that you liked a lot: the PhD in Counseling and Supervision, and the Master's in Engineering Management. I think these are 2 great examples of faculty developing really creative programs that meet the needs of students. And I think both of those programs will fare extremely well. I'm excited about that. But we've got to continue to do more of that. And so we've got to not only continue to push good ideas in terms of academic programs, but we've got to continually find the resources to make sure that we can finance them successfully and help them along the way. And the last challenge I'll point to is what we're beginning to face more and more now as we get better and better is the need to competitively retain our best people on campus and to recruit aggressively to fill those positions where we lose. The truth is good universities lose good people. Like you won't keep everybody. And I think it's also true that you want to be in the position of having the kind of talent on your campus that other people covet, other people want to get. So So this is a good thing. As other institutions find individuals on this campus that they would love to recruit away from us, that's a positive indicator, but it's also a challenge to us to make sure that we can retain those people here for a longer period of time. And so, part of that was implemented, part of that strategy was implemented earlier this summer with your board approval to do performance-based raises for faculty and staff. So I think this is probably the first year in Tennessee Tech's history where it was 100% performance-based salary increases for faculty and staff. And my belief is that over time it won't be the only thing that addresses this issue, but it will be a major part in helping us address retention of productive, influential faculty and staff on this campus. So thank you for your support in that. Rankings, I'll just hit a couple of highlights here. The U.S. News and World Report rankings recently came out. I think the things of note, this is the third consecutive year we've been rated among the national universities, the best national universities listing. I think that's notable. The things I find most notable, though, is that they have indicated our graduates have the lowest student loan debt of any institution in the state of Tennessee, second in the South, and 26th nationally. So they also indicate that the average graduate median salary when they leave Tennessee Tech is over $54,000. It's second only to Vanderbilt in Tennessee and highest among all public universities. So again, these all point to the value proposition for a degree at Tennessee Tech, that it's affordable, students are leaving with low debt loads, and they're getting good jobs, meaningful jobs, and that's where we want to keep this going. So in comparison to other Tennessee public university, Tech has the second highest graduation rate, the second highest first-year retention rate, and the second highest ACT score. Those are all really good indicators. But as I've indicated, we have some challenges, and I'll try to highlight more challenges in future meetings as well. I do want to sort of end here with a few high notes. You already heard from Dr. Glenn Cunningham, the Industrial Assessment Center. That's a great example of the kind of education that students get here at Tennessee Tech. I really appreciate Chairman Jones and all of you for making it a point to highlight some of those efforts on a regular basis. I'll bring up a couple more. You heard from the young lady with the student innovation team earlier, back in the summer in the June meeting, I think. ATS Innovations, it's a group, mechanical engineer, chemical engineer, and a nurse. I think Professor Geis has worked with this group pretty closely. Over the summer, they competed in what competition called 3686. It's a statewide competition for startup ventures. They placed third in that. I think they won an additional $10,000, and they're in the process of leveraging those resources into a startup enterprise. I think they're preparing a SBIR proposal to go to a federal agency and start that startup process. So that continues, and I appreciate the fact that the university is in a position to help those kinds of efforts. It's part of the education, but it's even more than that. It's making a difference in the culture, in the broader environment where we're working. In addition to that, we had six of our students, along with Dr. Stephen Canfield from Mechanical Engineering, were one of 25 teams selected nationally to present a microgravity neutral buoyancy experiment design at Johnson Space Center in Houston over the summer. That's another great example of students getting getting very practical experience. For our newest trustee, I'm excited to announce that Farm Bureau Federation has chosen Tennessee Tech to become the new home of the Tennessee High School Leadership Summit. We had a great visit to Columbia and Farm Bureau, I guess that was in June, wasn't it? Trustee Rose was there along with all the leadership of Farm Bureau. We had a contingent of about a dozen folks from here in Cookeville from the campus, and along with Mayor Shelton and Representative Williams and Senator Bailey, and it was a great representation. But this is a big opportunity for Tennessee Tech. We're really excited about it. You sort of think of it sort of like a Boys State kind of opportunity. It's a leadership summit that Farm Bureau has had at other places around the country over the years. They'd like to bring it home to Tennessee, and so we anticipate having 50 to 100 high school students here for a week in the summer, and through a leadership summit where they will focus on a lot of things, but related to leadership and agriculture and the role of agriculture in the future. And so we're really excited about that. Dr. Dennis Duncan in the School of Agriculture here at Tech will provide some leadership in helping put that program together. So we appreciate the relationship with Farm Bureau and this opportunity that is presented to us now. And then lastly, many of you know Dr. Michael Birdwell, Birdie, as most would refer to him. Birdie has quietly been serving, I guess about the last 3 years now, as the state chairman for the Tennessee Great War Commission, which is the celebration of the centennial of World War I. And most of you know Birdie is a tremendous historian and a great Alvin C. York scholar. But he's done a fantastic job at chairing the Great War Commission here in Tennessee, gotten a lot of publicity around the state, and those activities will be culminating later this fall. So we really congratulate Michael and all those on that commission, and glad, again, that Tennessee Tech could play a part in that. So, Mr. Chairman, I think that concludes my report. I'll be glad to address any questions or comments anybody has.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions? It was an outstanding report, and I really do appreciate you bringing up the three challenges. I think that's important for this board to hear always.
Yeah, so
Thank you.
thanks.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is really just informational. There is in your board book a letter that I was required to sign to the OVC. Just for explanation, the Ohio Valley Conference requires that the chair of the board attest that the president is responsible for the administration of the athletics program. He has the support of the board in operating a program of integrity, and he may vote on behalf of the institution on NCAA and OVC matters. So the chairs, well, I sent a letter. I hope you all approve. It was my responsibility. So. All right, item number 6.
Could
Yes.
I just say that we are also very lucky to have Mark Wilson, who I think is a person of incredible integrity. So just appreciate that too.
Absolutely. Shout out to Mark there. Okay, item number 6, Executive Committee report and recommendations. There are a few things to report. I'll be very brief since we discussed it earlier this morning. The first one is the appointment of Harville Eaton to the Interim Vice President for Research and Economic Development. The second one is the board evaluation process. We discussed it this morning. We voted on it as an executive committee, and just to remind the board that you will be receiving that questionnaire soon, and following that, the executive committee will review those surveys and decide, I guess, how to use it going forward after that. So moving on to item, I guess it's 6B. This is revisions to TTU policy 005. There was 2 main updates to this policy that we discussed this morning. One was the to assign oversight of enrollment management and career placement to the Academic and Student Affairs Committee. And secondly, to provide a provision to make it clear that the executive committee is responsible for initiating a board self-evaluation per accreditation standards, which we just previously discussed. So I'd like to entertain a motion to accept this policy 005 as revised.
I move the board approve the revisions to policy 005 as presented.
Do we have a second? The motion made by Trudy, seconded by Johnny. We'll have a roll call. No, do we need a roll call? Okay, we'll do a voice vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Secondly, we have a TTU Policy 110. This is access to public records and a rule. We did discuss this earlier today. I'll just go ahead and entertain a motion for the acceptance or approval of TTU Policy 110 and the associated rule related to public access of records.
I move the board approve TTU policy 110 and the rule related to access to public records as presented.
We have a motion made. Do we have a second? We have a second from Barbara. This one does require a roll call vote, so okay.
Fleming,
Aye.
Geist,
Aye.
Harper,
Aye.
Rose,
Aye.
Stites,
Aye.
Van Hooser,
Aye.
Wilmore,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
8 ayes.
Motion carries. Thank you. So now we are ready for item number 3, I guess, under the Executive Committee actions. This is the President's compensation. We had a good lengthy discussion this morning, and based on the President's evaluation, the Executive Committee recommends a 2% raise and a $60,000 bonus. So I'd like to entertain a motion from the Executive Committee to bring that to the full board.
So moved.
Okay, so we have a motion made by Trudy. Do we have a second? Okay, Barbara has made a second. Is there any other discussion or comments on this motion?
I have a couple of comments.
Okay?
Make sure I understand correctly. We separated his compensation percentage increase from the bonus. So his percentage increase was based on a certain assessment, and the bonus was based on his work towards gaining the university $4.2 million per year forthcoming, or going forward,
I
correct?
think that was the intent
So
of the
I understand
discussion.
all that, right, correctly. So if I did my math right, I think that, if you went 8 years, that's $33,600, $33,600,000. So that's substantial to me. And I think what's a and my understanding is that though there were several people working on this, Dr. Oldham was the one that was pushing, going forward, speaking, making appointments, and doing the verbalization that acquired this for the university. Is that correct? It's my understanding.
believe so.
Based on
That's all
the
of our
discussion.
understandings.
Okay. So I don't think about the number. I think about what's a fair compensation. If we're going to do this bonus, what is fair? And I think that for something that's going to garner $4.2 million per year, I think about all these budget shortfalls we talked about earlier, and if we didn't have $4.2 million this year, we'd have a greater shortfall. If we didn't have $33,600,000 over the next 8 years, we got more of a shortfall. So I look at it from that standpoint. So I think what's a fair, if we think a bonus is warranted, what is a fair number? And I think for something that's the gift that keeps on giving over time, I think a fair compensation for me would be a percentage, at least of the first year. And $60,000, I did the math, is 1.42%. 2% of that first year only is $84,000. 2.5% is $105,000. And to me, if we are gaining $4.2 million over the next several years going forward, based on an individual's work and effort, and we decide that we want to compensate him for that in a bonus, I think a fair bonus for me would be at least 2.5% of the first year's income from that. Because I think, where would we be if we didn't have that $4.2 million this year in our budget? Where would we be if we didn't have it next year and the next year and the next year? So for me, I would submit a 2.5%. That's $105,000. And based on all of that discussion, I don't think about the number necessarily as what's a fair assessment of that.
Could
Okay,
I ask?
before we go further, two things. Dr. Oldham, you said out earlier, you are welcome to stay. It won't hamper my comments, but it's up to you.
Because I have a question.
Okay.
The-
Second thing is, we do have just an order of procedure, because I don't know why I have this knack for expecting further discussion. But given that we have a motion on the floor, we could pursue this two different ways. If the discussion leads us to it, we could amend the motion, or we could certainly pass the motion as it stands as a baseline, and depending on the discussion, you could actually make a motion after that to increase it, if we wanted to take that direction. That would be my recommendation, just for procedure-wise, to get through this. So, anyway, let's go ahead and continue with the comments at this time, and then when it comes time to call a question, I'll probably take it in a two-step process. The one being voting on the current motion, and then a second one if you want to increase the bonus. Is that acceptable to the board? Okay, Barbara?
Well, my comment, and this is where I don't know the answer to this, but it's not, and I think Dr. Oldham did a great job on doing that, and I think he does a great job working with THEC too. But here's the thing, Barry, it's not that no other university got anything. The governor puts money in the budget, and all universities get some money. Now, we probably do better, but is that correct, Dr. Oldham? I mean, the governor's budget includes money for all the universities.
Well, it's a lot more complex than that, I'm afraid. Yes, the funding formula, we did fairly well in the funding formula again this year. The 4.2 million that's been referenced is really from two different initiatives. One was to garner funds that would directly impact our College of Engineering. That's $3 million. That was actually not in the governor's budget at all. That was a separate legislative action, and we were fortunate that we had some fantastic legislative support in that regard. The 1.2 million that has been referenced is related to our change in Carnegie classification, and that's an effort we've been working on for the past several years. It was a sort of I would describe it as sort of a inadvertent gap in the funding formula that when the formula was changed a few years ago, it didn't account for universities that would be changing Carnegie classifications, and so we've been pursuing an adjustment to that for a number of years also. That did have support from the governor's office over the last couple of years, but it did require a fair amount of effort on our part to make sure it stayed intact. So both of those were outside of the traditional funding formula allocation to the universities.
Any other comments?
So I look at, Barry, what you said in a very different way, because what I look at is, all in all, what was reported kind of in a, I guess, a marketing blitz, and it was on Tech Times, is that we got really $13 million, not all that in recurring funding. And when I think of it, I think we got that, and then we're still $250,000 short. So in my mind, that indicates a mismanagement of funds. That to me indicates that we are spending more than we are making. All the LGIs, all of the LGIs took a hit when Tennessee Promise happened, but they are not all having the budget issues that we are having, and part of that is the lack of prioritization in how we spend money and the strategic initiatives and our return on investment for those initiatives. So I look at it in a very different light, because where would we have been if we hadn't received that money? And the other LGIs did receive recurring funds. They received, equivalent to what we received. All the locally governed institutions, if you look in the THEC documents, received money that is like the $4 million that we got.
Just to be clear, not the same amount, though. I mean, that $300,000 for engineering was extraordinary
million.
this year.
3 million.
Or 3 million, excuse me. Oh, it's hard for me to say the numbers.
But
that
they
big.
all did get some reoccurring funding that is similar.
What I said at the beginning was, my understanding is that we would not have received the total of $4.2 million had not Dr. Oldham been pushing forward to make that occur. That was my understanding, and then everybody said yes.
And I guess my understanding is that it's a similar amount that other LGIs received.
So we would have
do you have
received
data on
4.2
that?
million.
Say,
Do you have data on that?
it's in the THEC, it's in the THEC report. And again, I guess when we think about a bonus, to me, a bonus means that everything was spectacular. Everything, if we are going to give somebody a $110,000 bonus, it means we did not have any shortfalls. We did not have any upheavals on campus. We have a charge of research misconduct. There are things, as we discussed earlier this morning, and reasons why I cannot support that.
I'm a little curious. I mean, the University of Memphis is giving a $150,000 bonus. Is it your understanding that their university is perfect? I mean,
No, but they're not having budget shortfalls either.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I made this point this morning, but just to kind of complete the circle, I stated this morning that this year was not perfect, and I hope I was
Right.
very, very clear
You
about
were,
that.
yes,
And
yes.
that was why I didn't recommend a huge salary increase. I recommended what I called a more modest salary increase, but I felt like we had had an extraordinary result with this state appropriation funding, and for that, I recommended what I considered to be an extraordinary bonus. Barry's recommending a higher bonus even yet, and I'm not opposed to that. I'd like to call the question on my motion, Mr. Chairman, if that's possible, and then have further discussion, just because we had considerable discussion about this morning, and then if we want to have a conversation about the incremental, I think that's fine, given that's where you seem to want to go parliamentarily, so.
I think that's the direction to take, really, because we have a motion brought forward from the executive committee, and that motion really was based on a consensus, while it wasn't a full board for sure, but that was the only way to, I think, to try to arrive at a number. So, given that, I'm going to call the question on the original motion. That was a 2% salary raise and a $60,000 bonus. We have a motion made and we have a second, and we'll have a roll call vote on that. Okay?
Fleming,
Aye.
Geist,
No.
Harper,
Aye.
Rose,
Aye.
Stites, Van Hooser,
Aye.
Wilmore,
I just want to make sure I understand. If I say yes to now, that I agree with 60,000, there is an opportunity for a subsequent motion.
Absolutely, that's the purpose.
Because if that's not the case, then my answer is no. So I will say aye.
Jones,
Aye.
I'll change mine to aye. You have that in a second, I'll begin.
7 ayes, 1 nay.
Okay, motion carries. So we have set basically a baseline, and based on previous discussion, Barry, did you want to make an additional motion?
Again, just to clarify, so there's no confusion, we had a discussion about an increase in salary. That was one discussion. And we had another discussion about bonus based on this effort that went forward that will incur an additional funding to the university of $4.2 million per year going forward. That was the separate discussion. That was the discussion about the bonus. So I'm clear on that, right? Okay. So with that, I think a fair assessment of a bonus is at least 2.5% for the first year, in my opinion, and that would be 105 total. So that would be an increase of $45,000. And I'll make that motion.
Can you make your motion? I'm sorry, but Captain Wilmore, would you be willing to make your motion as an incremental motion? So in other words, I understand we've already approved 60,000, so you're moving for an additional 45,000, is that
That's
correct?
correct.
That's the way it should be done, I think.
Yes.
So we have a motion made. Do we have a second? We have a motion made, and we have a second, so open the floor for further discussion.
I understand how you reached that total, Captain Wilmore. It's logical. It makes sense. I think the initial proposal might be a bit more appropriate, simply due to the budgetary constraints we discussed earlier, and also part, in fact, the fact that $3 million of the $4.2 million recurring funds is restricted. So we're already limited what we can do with the funds, and so increasing the percentage of the bonus might take money away from other things we might have been able to do with that classification money. As Trustee Geis was pointing out earlier, there's a variety of different things that could have been done with that extra now $45,000 that, I think the 60 might just be more appropriate given the current situation.
I understand what you're saying, but we wouldn't even be talking about this at all did we not have $4.2 million coming into this university every single year going forward. We wouldn't even be having the discussion. So, since we do have that amount, it's a lot easier to budget with an extra $4.2 million a year than it is without it. So since we do have that amount, my motion stands.
And if he brings in another 4.2 recurring funds this next year, we'll consider another bonus for him.
Amen.
I just have to say, in times of budget deficit, with the issues that we've dealt with, I could not in good conscience do it. I just couldn't, and I won't, but I wanted to explain, that's my reasoning, and I am a supporter of this president. But I think we have an entire university. This board is not designed to support any president. I mean, if we do, that's great, but our goal is fiduciary responsibility for the university, for public dollars, for dollars that parents and students spend. And I think at some point we have to say enough but not be enough. Now, if you can't live on, what would it be, $400,000 in Cookeville, Tennessee, I can talk to you and tell you how it's done.
That's not the issue.
But
That is not the issue,
Please,
Barbara. I'm
please,
sorry.
Please do me the courtesy
That
of
is not the issue.
letting me talk too. I did the same for you. But I'm just explaining why I think it's a mistake, and that's all I wanted to say.
Mr. Chairman, I would concur that I think we've got a very good president, a great president, and he's doing an excellent job. I guess in my years of working around Nashville, I have learned that recurring doesn't mean forevermore oftentimes. And I think we send the right message to our General Assembly as well if we say we are practicing good fiduciary responsibility. We're going to honor our president. We hope to keep our president, but we realize that the General Assembly could come back next year and say, we've got to reduce that a little bit, the recurring dollars, and I think we have to keep that in mind.
And if I may, every time the president and I have ever had a conversation about these recurring funds, he has said recurring with quotes around it because it is intended to be recurring, but as he has always acknowledged, this is a changing government and we could see things, but notwithstanding any of that, I'm supportive of this motion.
And it's good, we're in good economic times, which is another reason why not only us, but other LGIs received recurring funds.
So whether these funds are recurring beyond the first year or not, The motion only applied to the first year, am I correct?
That's correct.
That's what I seconded. So if they cut it all off next year, there's no bonus on the next year's funds. So the next year's funds won't be allocated. Only this first year's funds will take the 105,000. It's about what's fair, which Captain Wilmore shared with us.
Do you have any other comments? You know, to be honest, I mean, I'm torn, just for my own personal vote, because I do think that I agree a lot with Barry in your comments about reward. And to go to 105,000, I don't think is a stretch for I think the situation. But I am more cautious just because of the perception, I think, that public faculty may have about it. I hate to limit it because of that perception, but I don't know. It's a tough call. Sure.
Let me just, this is awkward for me personally. I appreciate the sentiments, I really do. I feel honored by the original motion. I'll be honest, I feel a little uncomfortable even going that high, but going beyond it, I feel very uncomfortable personally. So, I put this in the hands of the board. I think, I don't know if it was expressed earlier or not, I didn't ask for anything. And so, you honor me with the conversation and your thoughts, and I appreciate your support greatly. And I trust you to do whatever's right. But I just want to let you know where I am on this. I'm very uncomfortable with those kind of numbers personally.
And I did you a disservice, President Oldham. I did not mention that he did not. I think I was clear that I had talked to him and said I didn't think this was an extraordinary year for a salary increase. I thought we were going to do a more modest salary increase. I should have said he didn't ask for anything more than that, and I should have mentioned that because he did not.
And, I would like to second that too, just in my private discussions with the president. He never asked for anything.
Nor has he asked me for anything. I haven't talked to him about any subject matter relative to this conversation. And as far as I'm concerned, when he receives this bonus, if he wants to turn around because he's uncomfortable and wants to give 100% of it back to Tennessee Tech Foundation, go for it. But I don't want there to be any misunderstanding throughout this community, this university, or this state that this board is not backing our president. That's the message I want to send.
So I'm sorry, I don't usually have to say something, but I have to say something. I 100% back this president. So just because I choose not to vote yes to this extra motion does not mean that I don't 100% back this president. I believe we have a responsibility to the university itself, including the entire budget and including the entire university, and that we have to show that we have that full responsibility also. And Dr. Oldham knows that this, I don't think he has any doubt that this board supports him 110%. So I don't want it to be taken for those who will or won't, or who will vote no to this motion, don't fully support this president. That is not the case, and I don't. And so I take issue with you insinuating that those of us that are going to vote no are not supportive of the president. We are, and I get the differences of opinion, and I suggest that we call a vote and move on.
I'd like to say one more thing, please. I want to make it very clear to everyone in this room that I am very concerned about any budget shortfall, every dime this university spends, every single penny. I voted no first, the very first meeting, not to increase tuition. I was the only one, because I'm concerned about the cost to the students. So I am very passionate about doing what's right when it's right. So to infer that an increase in a bonus is not being concerned about the money spent at this university and how it's spent, which was what I'm gathered a little bit from this conversation, is not the case. We would not have $4.2 million right now were it not for the efforts of President Oldham. So for that reason, I want to make it clear, that's why I am making the motion to increase it to 2.5%.
And that's why I seconded that motion.
But I still have to say, we got that $4 million and plus more, and we were still short. So
We're not talking about his salary. This is
No,
separate
I'm
from
not-
salary.
No, I'm not talking about the salary. I am talking about the running of this university. I am talking about, and again, there are very, very good things about President Oldham. Externally, he is amazing. But if we did not get that money, we would have been in trouble.
Again,
because-
Melissa, you're combining the two.
No, I am
We've separated
not.
salary
I
from
think,
bonus.
just as a quick comment, I mean, looking at that 5-year budget analysis that Clarie presented earlier, I mean, there's many, many factors to that issue. You can't just point to the president and say because there was a budget shortfall.
But we are pointing to the president and saying, we're doing the reverse. But
Because he
we're
was so
saying-
much more, it's not the same, because he was so much more instrumental in acquiring those funds. And I know it because I talked to the legislators about it.
Mr. Chairman, I think Ms. Van Hooser called for the question.
Yep,
I'm not
it's time
sure.
to call for the question. So, Kay, give us a roll call vote, please. The vote, the motion, Barry, don't let me put words in your mouth, was to increase the bonus by an additional $45,000 to make it $105,000. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And that was your second.
Yes, it was.
So we're clear on the motion? Okay?
Fleming.
No.
Fleming votes nay. Geist.
No.
Geist votes nay. Harper.
Abstain.
Harper abstains. Rose.
No.
Rose votes no. Nay. Stites.
Yes.
Stites votes aye. Van Hooser.
Nay.
Van Hooser votes nay. Wilmore.
Yes.
Wilmore votes aye. Jones
Abstains.
abstains. Mr. Chairman, you have 2 ayes, 4 nays, and 2 abstentions.
Motion fails. Thank you very much, Board. That was tough.
Has nothing to do, and I think that was an incredible display of integrity, which is one thing we love. When you made that statement, I'm going to cry now.
Okay, let's move on. Academic and Student Affairs Committee report and recommendations. Barbara? We have the new academic program proposal for the MS in Engineering Management.
I'm serious about that. I just have to find it. Just 1 second.
Dr. Fleming, if you could speak into the microphone.
Okay.
Difficulty. We need
We had, first, we had some great presentations. We had a new academic program proposal for a master's in engineering management, which is College of Business working with College of Engineering. And it's an interdisciplinary program that they're going to offer, and it is online. So many wonderful things about it. So I guess, do I make the motion, or does it?
You make the motion.
I'll make the motion, okay. So I'll move that the board approve the new academic program proposal with the recognition of financial implications for a Master of Science in Engineering Management. And if this was a revision
So
of
have a
an earlier
motion made. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Just one comment on this. When we discussed this in preparing for the board meeting, it's one thing to, I guess, approve this master's degree. The second part of it is to, how do you manage the budget? And this is why this motion is sort of written this way. It says, with recognition of financial implications. Because we don't know exactly what that's going to mean, but it is just a recognition of the board that we expect that to be budgeted. And when it comes time to approve the budget, that will then be in it. It's not necessarily a vote to approve the budget for this. It's just recognizing that there will be budget implications.
And actually, we won't move it through committee unless there is a detailed budget report. And both of the people who did that, and the provost's office is very careful to look at
Right.
those, so they're very well done. Now, as an aside, what we probably do need to do as a board, when we've approved a program, is come back a year later and look at how
It'll
that
be part of
program
the
is
budget
doing.
at some point.
Yeah, let me just add that THEC puts programs like this on I think it's a 5-year, is Lauren still here?
I think it's 3, might be
3 years?
I think.
No, no, it's a monitoring of more than 2 years. Yeah, after approval. Yeah, 5 years, that's what I thought. So it's a 5-year monitoring of any new program to ensure that it meets the projections, and if it fails to meet those projections, then you take a closer look. So the board will have an opportunity to monitor these programs as they move through that 5-year probation.
It's good, and that was one of the things Sachs asked us, so it just came to mind when I was looking over that question set.
Aye.
We had another really good new program proposed, and that was for PhD in counseling and supervision, and that's in addition to the graduate level programs of study in the Department of Counseling and Psychology and the College of Education. And we discussed that at some length, and I move the board approve the new academic program proposal with recognition of financial implications for a PhD in counseling and supervision.
Second. Aye.
Okay, and this was on student immunizations, and the purpose of this rule and policy is to provide guidance on required immunizations for certain diseases or exemptions from such requirement. And this was developed by the Student Affairs, and it really well met the Tennessee requirements in that area. So I move the board approve TTU Policy 360 and the rule related to immunizations as it was presented.
We have a motion made. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second made. Any other comments? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Got to be a roll call vote because it's a rule.
Ah,
So,
that's why we have an
okay.
attorney.
Fleming,
Aye.
Geist,
Aye.
Harper,
Aye.
Rose,
Aye.
Stites,
Aye.
Van Hooser,
Aye.
Wilmore,
Aye.
Jones, 8 ayes.
So we're ready for agenda item number 8. This is the audit business committee report recommendations. First one is the 5-year strategic financial plan.
So at the committee meeting, we presented the update of the progress towards the 5-year strategic financial plan. And so the Audit and Business Committee is presenting a draft 5-year financial strategic plan as an informational item and moves that the board support the full development of this plan.
Second. Does it come, I didn't know if it had to come from your committee. Does it? Okay, second. Sorry, can I just, I don't know if this is a place to do this or not, but is there a way for me to be included on that ad hoc committee that is on the university?
I will look to Dr. Oldham since he assigned the committee.
Needs to be on the ad hoc committee for the 5-year financial assessment.
Yeah, I mean, I'll defer to Dr. Stinson, but I don't have any problem with that.
She would like to be on the committee for the
On
5-year plan.
On the 5-year, the ad hoc committee for the 5-year strategic plan for finance. I just wanted to suggest that I'm on that committee.
Okay, yeah.
Believe me, that's the first
Okay.
Melissa Geist has ever asked to be on a committee. I'll just tell you that right now.
It's not a committee that people were jumping
I
up and
know.
down to join.
But
Yeah,
she's
it's
put
one of those
together,
things where you actually have to ask how you're really feeling if you're asking to be on
Oh,
it.
but it's so many smart people in one room that I thought everybody wanted to be on it.
Thank you. Okay, so we finished with everything except the disclosed capital projects. Since we delayed that presentation from the committee, we bring it up to the full board. So, Clarie, we're ready for you.
All right, thank you, Chairman Jones. We have two disclosed capital projects that we're presenting today that we are asking for the approval of the board. The first one is a vehicular engineering shop building. This project is a $490,000 project. It has a 2,600 square feet. It will be paid for from the $3 million, part of the $3 million special appropriation for engineering. It is a startup shop that is needed for the vehicular engineering program that has already been approved and has already started. They do need this building by next fall, and so this will give us plenty of time to plan for the building, get it built by the time they need it. The second one is a ag engineering technology shop. It is a smaller building. It is 1,200 square feet. It's $235,000 project, and this is to replace the shop that we will be demoing for the new science building, and so it is a replacement facility for ag engineering. So I actually need two things. I need the board to approve us moving forward, sending these to THEC and on to the State Building Commission for their approval. And also I need the approval of the board to for us to plan where we're going to place it and make that modification into our master plan.
Just a question, these two buildings, are these 100% funded then by us, or how's the state funding on that?
Yeah, they are 100% funded by Tennessee Tech.
Okay, and the second question, just curious, I'm not suggesting it should be moved, but both of these facilities are now going to be out at Shipley Farm, correct?
We have had some preliminary discussions about the location. I have not. The ag building will be at the Shipley Farm. It has not been totally determined. We need to get through a little further along in the planning process on the engineering building.
My only concern, and again, I leave it up to the university, is just the vehicular engineering building, I'm afraid would deter student interest if it's that far away. And it'd sure be nice if it could be on campus.
And we've had some preliminary discussions about the fact that, once we have an engineering building, then, we would incorporate that process into the new engineering building. In the meanwhile, where can we locate this building that it would continue to have value to the university? And there's a couple of different locations that we consider. Shipley Farm is one discussion that we've had. The Foundation Hall area is another discussion that we've had. And so until we get further into the planning, that's why I'm asking for the approval to put this on the master plan in the location that makes the most sense.
So we're not necessarily voting on the location, we're just voting on putting it on the master plan, and you'll try to get it on campus.
Right. You got it.
Let me just add real quick. The projects like this, and the science building is a good example. We try to get the design team working jointly with leadership in the school or college and the faculty to help design the project and actually determine the ultimate site of it as well. So that's yet to be determined, and the faculty in engineering will have a large say in which way they want to go with that.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Shall we have a motion? No, we need a motion.
So, okay.
Okay. So we have a motion made, and we have a second from Radonna, and I think we need a roll call vote. Okay?
Fleming. Geist.
Aye.
Harper.
Aye.
Rose. Stites. Van Hooser.
Aye.
Wilmore.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye. Thank you, Clarice. Is that all you need?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. It has been brought to my attention that under item number 8A, the 5-year strategic plan, apparently I failed to call for a voice vote. Did we have a motion?
We did.
We did.
We had a motion and we had a second. Just to restate the motion, it was the Audit and Business Committee is presenting a 5-year draft financial strategic plan as an informational item and moves the board to support the full development of the plan. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for catching that. So, item number 9, just announcement of the 2019 meeting dates. Meeting dates will be March the 21st, June the 20th, September 24th, and December 5th, all for 2019. Do we have any other business?
Our next meeting is still December 6th, is that correct?
December 6th. I think that's correct, yes. Thank you all. It was a challenging meeting, and just as an observation, I applaud the board for our openness and our discussions and the civility that we handle our disagreements. So I think this is what we're supposed to do. Yes, and we will have short reception outside for remaining 30 minutes. Please, if you want to talk to us individually, we're here. So thank you all very much for a great day. Meeting adjourned.